Unknown Worlds has officially won a major legal battle against publisher Krafton, which helped them regain control over Subnautica 2 and announced that the game is launching into early access today. After months of lawsuits, executive removals, corporate drama, and fears that the future of the game was in serious trouble, the developers behind the original Subnautica are back in charge of the sequel, and players can finally jump into the game themselves. This has rapidly become one of the biggest gaming industry stories of the year, because what started as a behind-the-scenes business conflict turned into a public fight over the future of one of the most anticipated survival games on the market. For anyone who hasn't been following the situation closely, here's the quick context. Unknown Worlds was acquired several years ago by Krafton, the publisher best known for PUBG. At first, the partnership seemed like a good fit. Unknown Worlds gained access to major financial backing, while Krafton added another highly respected franchise to its portfolio. But over time, reports began surfacing that there were growing tensions between the studio and publisher over development, timelines, leadership decisions, and a massive earnout agreement reportedly worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Then the situation exploded publicly when key executives at Unknown Worlds, including CEO Ted Gill, were removed from their positions. That immediately sparked legal action and raised concerns among fans that Subnautica 2's development could be derailed entirely. What makes this situation so significant is that the courts ultimately sided heavily with Unknown Worlds in several major areas. Ted Gill was reportedly reinstated with operational authority, and rulings allowed Unknown Worlds to move forward with the early access launch of Subnautica 2 without publisher interference. That's a huge victory not just for the studio itself, but also for fans who were worried the game could possibly never see the light of day. Instead, the developers behind the franchise now appear to have regained meaningful control over the project's direction and release schedule. And now we're seeing the immediate result of that victory. Subnautica 2 has officially entered early access today, and interest in the game has exploded almost instantly. The franchise already had enormous momentum before this legal battle thanks to the popularity of the original Subnautica and Below Zero, but the lawsuit itself arguably pushed awareness of the sequel even higher. Suddenly, people who normally never pay attention to legal disputes in gaming were reading statements from both sides in this court case and debating the future of the franchise online. What's fascinating is how strongly public sentiment appeared to shift in favor of Unknown Worlds during the conflict. Across multiple gaming forums, many players increasingly viewed the developers as the side trying to protect the identity and future of the game, while viewing Krafton as overly corporate and controlling. Whether or not every public assumption about the case was accurate, perception matters, and this entire situation became a public relations nightmare for Krafton. Instead of people talking purely about excitement for Subnautica 2, the conversation became centered around publisher interference, executive power struggles, lawsuits, and financial disputes. At the same time, all of that controversy also dramatically increased visibility for the game itself. Subnautica 2 became one of the most talked about upcoming PC titles on the internet. Millions of players added it to their wish lists, content creators started covering every update surrounding the lawsuit, and anticipation continued growing despite the uncertainty. In a strange way, the legal battle may have unintentionally helped turn the launch into an even bigger event than it already would have been. And honestly, the reason people care about this much comes down to the reputation of the franchise itself. The original Subnautica wasn't just another survival crafting game. It built a massive audience because of its atmosphere, exploration, environmental storytelling, and sheer sense of terror. Few games have managed to make players genuinely afraid of deep water the way Subnautica did. The combination of isolation, discovery, mystery, and massive underwater creatures created an experience that stood out from nearly everything else in the genre. So expectations for the sequel were already enormous long before any legal issues entered the picture. Now, with early access finally here, the focus can start shifting back towards the actual game itself. Players are diving into a brand new alien world, exploring unfamiliar ecosystems, building underwater bases, uncovering mysteries, and encountering whatever terrifying leviathans Unknown Worlds has prepared this time around. Of course, because this is early access, the game will continue evolving over time. Features will change, content will expand, balancing adjustments will happen, and there will almost certainly be bugs and technical issues along the way. But that was also true of the original Subnautica, and many longtime fans are excited to see what is in store for the Subnautica sequel. I also think this entire story says a lot about the modern gaming industry. Players today pay much closer attention to what happens behind the scenes than they used to. They follow lawsuits, studio acquisitions, executive shakeups, and publisher disputes because they understand how directly those things can impact the games they care about. And when fans believe a publisher may be interfering with a beloved franchise or the developers behind it, backlash can build very quickly. In this case, Unknown Worlds seem to have emerged from the situation not only with legal momentum, but also with an enormous amount of community support. Now comes the most important part of all of this, whether Subnautica 2 can actually live up to the hype. Because of months of headlines, lawsuits, uncertainty, and non-stop discussion, players are finally getting their hands on the game. And if Unknown Worlds can deliver another unforgettable survival experience, this legal victory could end up becoming one of the most important turning points in the franchise's history. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And if you like to support the channel directly, check out my Patreon, where my latest exclusive is a look at why a publisher's obsessed with remakes. Thanks for watching, and as always, game on.